Hello and welcome back to the Ask podcast, where we will be together attaining some secret knowledge after an extraordinarily and unforgivably long time. So I hope you'll forgive us for that. But we are back and with a bang, I hope, with a fantastic guest today. If you don't know me, my name is Mrs. Summers. I'm the Deputy Head of English and Drama. My wonderful co-host over there is...
It is a pleasure to co-host. I am Mr. Till. I am involved in the sixth form and teach some English. Attain Secret Knowledge, by the way, is such a good title for the podcast. Came up with it years ago. Mrs. Summers, I think, it was your brainchild.
I think it was Miss Yanka Smith's brainchild as a joke, and I just really liked it and was run with it.
Attain Secret Knowledge. This is great. Let's do it.
Woohoo. Absolutely. And we've got some lovely panellists here today to lightly grill our wonderful special guest. If you want to just briefly introduce yourself, that'd be fab.
Hello, I am Scott Warner, and I'm in Year 10 currently.
Lovely.
Evan Forrest, also in Year 10.
Hello, I'm Tao. I'm currently in Year 12 studying economics, business and English literature.
Should have started with English literature, the most important one, of course.
Also, given today's topic, Mum, there won't be grilling so much as roasting, will they?
Nice. See, I was thinking I should have thought puns, shouldn't I? But sir, you're on it as usual.
Why I'm here.
Most importantly, the person I haven't introduced is our incredible special guest, Mr. Price, Head of History. We've been absolutely excited to get him on to find out his thoughts, and he has chosen the topic of coffee, unusually. So first question, as we always do, sir, is why is coffee your chosen topic for today?
Well, thank you very much for having me. Coffee is probably the most important thing in my life. There are very few days, my fiance won't enjoy me saying that, but hey, there are very few days that go by where I don't have at least 2 cups of coffee, and it is a truly joyous process. I think what interests me the most about coffee is the variety of flavours that you can get from it. There are no 2 days where my coffee is the same. It will taste radically different. Yesterday, I had a very, very nice one from China, which had tasting notes of white wine. No alcohol was included in it. It just tasted like white wine before anyone jumps on any bandwagons. But this morning, I had an excellent one from Colombia, which tasted like melon and papaya, and the very, very different flavour profiles. But also, I think it's the process of making coffee. I mean, we live in a world that is incredibly quick, incredibly driven by this desire for the next thing, for instant. And if there is one thing that coffee should never be, it is instant.
Oh dear. I'll hide this, shall I?
Coffee is, it's about the process of taking time to slow down, to really appreciate the aromas, the flavours, but also the process of making it, boiling the water, enjoying the process, whichever that is, whether that's espresso or filter-based coffee, and really just taking the time to slow down, connect with nature, because coffee is first and foremost a berry, which means that we are connecting with nature, and enjoying that process and getting to taste some excellent coffee at the same time.
Wow. Brilliant. Wonderful overview. Now I'm going to pass it to a panellist. I don't mind who feels like they want to jump in, but if you feel ready, ask the first follow-up question that comes to your mind.
I was just wondering how you actually came to find your interest of coffee and how you came to find how you enjoy it so much.
So it all started with my undergraduate studies at university and a desire for caffeine, because I had a tendency of leaving my assignments to the last minute, which is something that I would never recommend doing. And in order to get through those assignments, I would end up having a need to stay awake, and therefore caffeine was a great fix for that. And I went to university in Oxford, and there was a coffee shop very close to my student accommodation called Society. It's fantastic. You should all go and visit them. If you do, tell them I sent you. But I was going into this coffee shop and regularly kind of working there because it's nicer than a library. It's kind of not quite as quiet. There's a bit of buzz going on, which means that ominous silence isn't quite there. And the problem with Oxford libraries is that most of them you can't take anything but a pencil into in case you deface their 1,000-year-old books. So the coffee shop was much more practical. And so I would then start procrastinating, actually doing my work by talking to the wonderful people behind the bar making their coffee. And this continued through COVID, where they stayed open for takeaway coffee only, and this was my only form of actual human to human interaction during the pandemic while I was online teaching. And so I just started learning more and more in this kind of natural progression of, why do I prefer this coffee to this coffee? Why does a coffee from Colombia taste so different from an Ethiopian coffee? And understanding more and more about the processes behind it and the stories of the farmers who grow it and the impact that it can have really sparked my passion and interest, and the rabbit hole I've never found my way out of.
Evan or Scott, don't mind.
I was going to say, how have you talked about so many different countries where you've gotten these coffees from. How have you managed to get all these different types? Is there a specific place you get it, or?
So the joy of specialty coffee is that there are specialty coffee shops everywhere, and all of these specialty coffee shops have connections with roasteries. There are roasteries all over the UK. There are some I think there's one that I've discovered quite recently that's in Maidenhead, but there are some in Oxford. There are some in, there's lots in London. There's lots on the kind of south coast. And these roasteries will import coffee from around the world. They will roast it to a particular profile, and then they will sell it on. So once I know about these roasteries, often through social media, I will have a look at some of their coffee and end up buying it. But often I find it through the coffee shops that I go to. They'll often have a nice shelf of beans that you can buy to take home with you. So I try it in the coffee shop, find out how it should taste, and then I buy the beans, bring them up into my office and try and recreate that experience at home.
Interesting. It's almost like beer tasting or wine tasting.
Very much so, yeah.
I'd like to know your thoughts on a specific variety of coffee and somewhat of a controversial one, which is Kopi Luwak. I hope I've pronounced that right. But for people who do not know, listening to the show, it is one of the world's most expensive varieties of coffee. And it is where the coffee beans have been eaten by the Asian palm civet and then
passed through it,
taken from their excrement and washed and then roasted. The reason why it's somewhat controversial, I don't want to step on your toes too much here, it has caused a lot of factory farming of an already quite endangered species. So I'd like to know your thoughts on this.
Well, this is a question I get asked semi-frequently, actually, because that's the one type of specialty coffee that people have tended to hear about. I have never tasted it. I've had opportunities to buy it. I have not, because ethically, I don't feel like that is something I want to contribute towards. I think trying to consume coffee in an ethical way is very, very difficult. There is a huge amount of exploitation in the chain of coffee, both from farmers, particularly farmers in places where coffee is good to grow. These are often developing nations, and so making sure that they get a fair price for their coffee is really, really important to me and my relationship with coffee. And having had the opportunity to and learning about the amount of factory farming that has taken place in the production of that type of coffee, until I can find an ethically sourced version of it, I won't be trying it, which is a shame, because I would like to know what makes it so different, having been through the digestive system of a small Asian mammal. But until I can find ethically sourced ones, because it's not just the factory farming, it actually has done quite wonders for the numbers of them, but those numbers in captivity, where they are force fed essentially a version of Haribos. Like, if they should not be, these mammals don't naturally eat as many coffee berries as we are force feeding them. They would maybe have one or two as an additional sweet treat in their diet that they could scavenge, but they are instead kind of force fed them all the time. So it's like us taking a year 7 and putting him in a cage and just feeding him nothing but Haribos, for which I'm sure they'd enjoy briefly, but then the novelty would wear off very quickly.
Just to clarify, we don't ever do that, just in case anybody's wondering, in case there are any more bandwagons on the way. Tao, do you want to take us in a new direction?
I was going to speak about the social aspect of coffee, as it brings a lot of people together, especially with the cafes. Have you had any past experiences with this?
Yeah, I think some of the things that really helped me to understand a coffee a lot more were some of the events with coffee. So there are two that spring to mind. The first one is the London Coffee Festival, which takes place every year in May, over a Friday, a Saturday, and a Sunday. And companies, roasters, coffee makers, coffee drinkers, coffee suppliers from all over the world kind of descend on London. And share their latest things and talk to each other about it. And so there is a real community that comes along with the making and the facilitating of the coffee trade. But also some of my best friends I've made through drinking coffee with them. A former colleague and friend of mine, every year we get the same matching coffee advent calendar, and we compare notes on it. So we have spreadsheets from the last 4 years of our matching coffee advent calendars, comparing the different tasting notes, and often the coffees that he absolutely adores, I can't stand, and vice versa, because it's such a subjective thing, but also differences in how we make it, differences in how when we drink it, whether it's still very, very warm or still very, very cold. So there is such an opportunity to just stop and connect with coffee. But also I think it's the community aspect goes beyond just us here in the UK, because coffee is genuinely changing the lives of some very vulnerable people around the world. There are some collectives out in Colombia that are female owned, and they are helping widows and women who have lost the kind of man, the traditional breadwinner of the family, getting them small plots of land, working with different communities and enabling them to grow and sell their own coffee and take home a salary that gives them financial autonomy and freedom in societies which are not quite as equal as the UK is. And so coffee, when done properly, really does have the power to change people's lives through connection. We're in a mental health kind of epidemic at the moment, and just slowing down and meeting someone for a coffee can be a really good way of connecting with them. But also across the world, it really does impact the day-to-day lives of people.
You're an excellent salesman, sir. I think we're all going to be going coffee mad after this. Did you have a question, sir?
Yeah, I was just going to invite you to, in your role as our head of history, to think about history through, I'm going to say through the lens of coffee, but that doesn't make any sense. Obviously, the first thing that you think of is the links with European colonialism and one of the key products that coffee was. But also later than that, coffee house culture.
Yeah.
So in England, for example, really linked with end of the 1600s, the beginning of the stock market. So much business was done in the coffee houses. And also in Europe, I guess in the early 20th century, as an intellectual hub, the coffee house was so significant for certain communities excluded from universities. What stands out to you among the history of coffee?
So I went on a trip to Vienna a few years ago, and Vienna has a massive coffee house culture. It's such a fundamental part of that city. You can't really go kind of 10 meters without walking into or walking past a coffee shop. And these coffee houses would have been not just the hubs of connection and community, but they would have been places where people who couldn't read could go and have the latest bits of literature and Enlightenment thought and proclamations from the Austro-Hungarian monarchy. And all of these things would happen in a space that was essentially removed from the social hierarchy. You would have princes of the Austro-Hungarian Empire shoulder to shoulder with people who couldn't read or write. They're kind of regular citizens. And this begins to break down a lot of that social hierarchy that predominates the kind of early modern period, and leads to things like the French Revolution. The Declaration of the Rights of Man from the French Revolution was read aloud across salons and coffee shops in Paris. And then a few weeks later, they're storming the Bastille. And so the spread of information through coffee houses is really, really important in terms of the history.
And maybe just because they were highly caffeinated as well.
Exactly. Nothing motivates
the Bastille.
Precisely. But I also think that colonial impact that you mentioned is really significant as well. Burundi, a country in northern Africa, used to be ruled by the Belgians. And they mandated that every single family, every single house must have a coffee plant. And they had to look after that coffee plant. And then the fruit of that coffee plant would be taken by the state and shipped back over to Belgium. And one of the ways that people in Burundi kind of quietly protested this colonial rule was sabotaging the coffee plants. They would wake up in the dead of night and pour boiling water onto the roots of the plant, which would stop it from producing fruit that would be able to be used in it without visibly damaging it, because it was a capital offence to damage your coffee plant. And that was just really, really impactful, both in terms of the lives of Europeans, but also just a symbolic of that colonial tension between the people who consume the most coffee and the people who produce the most coffee. And actually, when you go to countries like Colombia, Ethiopia, Rwanda, they produce vast amounts of the world's coffee, but the biggest countries that drink coffee are Norway and Finland. And if you try to grow coffee up in the Arctic Circle, it is not going to go well.
That does seem fair. Evan, do you want to jump in?
When it comes to, once again, consuming coffee, would you say you're more of a sort of thinking about chains like maybe Costa and Starbucks, or more of like much smaller local businesses?
If you see me in a chain coffee shop, something's gone terribly wrong with my day, and I'm there for the caffeine, not the coffee. The only one you will occasionally see me in is Cafe Nero, because they have what's called a single origin. So most of your big kind of coffee shop chains, they can't trace where their coffees come from. Often it's come from various countries around the world. Lots of it will have come from Vietnam, and it is roasted so dark that any of the imperfections, any of the defects in the coffee beans can't be tasted by the drinker. But you can't trace it. It's just their Starbucks or their Costa coffee. Cafe Nero at least has a single origin option. It costs extra, but I am willing to pay that extra to know where that's come from. And also it means that you get more of that kind of flavour profile. But I have not stepped foot into a Pret for several years now because of their coffee subscription, which I hated. I'm so glad that fell apart, because it meant that people weren't going to independent coffee shops. They weren't going to people who genuinely love coffee, who love customer service. They were going because they could pay £25 a month and end up with 5 free coffees a day, which, if you game the system, gets you a hell of a lot of coffee very quickly without having to pay the price that coffee is. And when you cheap out on coffee, it's not Pret that suffers, it's the people producing it. And there is a huge amount of slave labour that is still used in the coffee production to this day, right now, out there on coffee plantations, which are very, very intensive crops to grow. There will be people who are in slave labour growing that. And so I think it's worth paying extra to try and ethically consume that coffee and support local businesses and local growers.
You say about the intense environment, I want to bring it back to one of the other controversial issues. How far is coffee contributing to climate change?
Hugely.
Okay.
Particularly
Bit
because
of
that journey, right? Like, if I track the air miles of a particular cup of coffee that I've had, they are often huge. I think I was listening to another coffee-related podcast, which is really sad. But hey, they do only coffee-related content, so it's great. But they live in Uganda. They came over to London and they drank a coffee that had been grown in Colombia, flown to Japan to be roasted, flown from Japan to London, where it was then consumed in a cafe. And you think about the air mile that single coffee bean has flown more than I have in my life, and that's huge. But there are roasteries out there who are doing really great things to try and reduce that impact. So Origin, a coffee roastery based down in Cornwall and London, they have started transporting as much of their coffee as possible by sail ship. And you can buy coffee that has never been in an aeroplane, which massively reduces that environmental impact. But again, being able to trace it means that you can see how much of that carbon impact that it is having. But it is still dangerously large.
To give a bit of hope, though, perhaps there are very clever people who are taking advantage of the coffee house culture, having a very nice cup of coffee and trying to come up with what will be some of the future solutions to climate change.
Yeah.
So coffee could be inspiring those people.
Okay. We can
I
only
don't know.
hope.
I don't know if I've created hope, but I thought I'd try and create some
Yeah,
hope.
no, we don't want to go too bleak. Apologies for taking it as bleak. Now, I think you've got time, one of you, for one more question before we go quick fire, because time is running away.
Yeah, I was wondering, so why is coffee so culturally associated with the USA. I'm thinking kind of Cup of Joe and stuff like that. Even though it was not invented there, it is not largely grown there, to my knowledge, and it's not even the biggest consumer. So why does it have this cultural association?
Because America dominates Western society. We, as Brits, consume American films, which show American coffee. We consume American songs, which talk about American coffee. I'm thinking specifically of Sabrina Carpenter here, who didn't get a #1 with espresso in America, but did in the UK. Though I will admit it did top my Spotify Wrapped last year. So there's a second admission for you.
Wow.
But I think it's just American cultural hegemony, really. You continue to see America dominate things, but actually, I think when you remove America from that conversation, you see a lot more of where coffee can really take the world. Particularly, when we say America, I do mean the United States, before any geography teachers start hunting me down. Because Colombia is in the Americas and part of America, but not the US. So I think there are lots of places in America that do and should dominate that coffee conversation. As well as places in Africa and now places in Asia as well. There is a huge amount of growth in the coffee market across Asia, in places like China, but also places like Yemen are starting to grow coffee, which is really impactful for those communities there as well.
And the significance too, I suppose, of Italian Americans in the US. Coffee culturally in Italy is such a very stylish and important part of life.
Great point. Okay, so for those of us that don't know, quick fire is where we're off topic now. 1 minute of quick fire questions for Sir to help us get to know him a little bit more. I think it makes sense if Tao doesn't mind. I'll start with him. I say 1 minute, but I haven't got a watch. Yes, but if we go sequentially round this way, quick fire questions, something you want to know about Sir.
Do you have a favourite area of history that you teach to students?
Oh, the American Revolution. I don't get to teach it enough, but I do love the American Revolution.
Favourite ever film?
Jurassic Park.
Ooh.
Dog, cat, or other pet?
I have to say a cat because I have a cat now and she is the light of my life.
Do you have a favourite colour?
Blue. Sometimes. Red other times.
Quite different. Favourite book?
Is it a cop-out to also say Jurassic Park? Because it's a great book as well.
Favourite sports team?
Ooh.
My university ultimate frisbee team. Got some great memories.
In a phrase, what you love most about teaching?
Ooh.
The constant challenge.
Fair enough.
Favourite event in history, not just to teach, but in general?
Execution of Louis XVI.
Ouch. Fair enough. Final.
Favourite band or single music artist?
Gangs of Youth, an American, amazing Australian indie band.
Not Sabrina Carpenter.
No.
Brilliant. Oh, well, I feel we've really got to know Sir in an amazing way.
From the next episode, there will be a cryptic clue.
Okay.
And here's the pitch. If you put all the cryptic clues together and work out what they have in common, what their connection is, if you like, there will be a spectacular prize. So regular listening to the podcast is rewarded. That's what we like.
There we go. Couldn't set ourselves up better. Thank you so much to everyone today. Our fantastic panellists, Tao and Evan and Scott, for their very insightful questions on a range of different areas and topics and interests. And for Sir, clearly having incredible knowledge and breadth, no matter which we had geography questions, history questions, cultural questions, but none of them phased Sir. So thank you so much to Mr. Price for coming on today. Thank you to my wonderful co-host, Mr. Till, for coming back and agreeing to put this back on after I think the last time I did this was before I went off maternity leave about 1 million years ago. So I'm so glad we've got this back on the road. And very importantly, thank you to our AV team, Brendan, Barney and the crew who've done such a fabulous job. And thank you for agreeing to host us here in our upgraded studio today. Very excited. Be thinking about, by the way, guys, email myself, Mrs. Summers, or Mr. Till, if you've got guests that you'd like, topics you'd like, if you'd like to be a panellist. I've had a number of people come forward. If you're interested in getting involved, please, please, please do. Also, follow us on Instagram, the John Hampden Instagram. I don't think we've got Twitter anymore, but the YouTube, on the school website. Hopefully this will be going out in the parent bulletins. Perhaps you're listening to us in a form time, but so many different ways to listen to us and to get involved. So I thank you to you all for listening, and hopefully we will be returning to your ears very soon. Thank you.